He likes listening to them and watching them, yes. He does. He's a birdie fan, just like his dad and his mom.
And his brother.
And his brother. I don't know what made it in his mind to where, I guess it's because we probably never get up and shoo a bird.
Yeah.
He's probably seen us shoo kitties and shoo other dogs and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's ever seen us shoo a bird.
Yeah.
So he's probably just like, oh, these are mom and dad's little pets.
They're also little too. I think he has this metric of if it's below a certain size, it's not a thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think he knows they're there, but I think you're right about that.
He doesn't know that they're like living, breathing things that can be spookles and shit.
Yeah. He was that way with
Nova.
Nova, yeah. He just never quite got that Nova was a creature.
Yeah.
I thought Nova was like a little toy.
Yeah.
Which I guess was better than the alternative.
Yeah.
It always scared the shit out of me how interested, like, especially Yujiro was in Nova.
Yeah.
Yujiro could have just, like,
Yeah. And then, unfortunately, ended up being corny. And undid
yeah.
it.
But
Shit happens. The menagerie, unfortunately.
yeah. Morning. Hey, Paul. Hey. What up? You guys still saying good morning? Hello. Good morning. Oh, you're there. Good morning. Yes, yes, yes. Owen. Every time I see that name, I think of that movie Throw Mama from the Train. The lady's like, Owen, get me my cigarettes, Owen. Owen, I need to go to the bathroom, Owen. I'm glad my parents didn't name me Owen. It's a cool name, but I can't think of anything other than that when I hear the name Owen. Same old lady. Same old lady who played Ma Fratelli in the Goonies. That lady got a lot of jobs in like the 80s as like the ugly hag of a woman or whatever, or like the evil woman or the mean woman. And she was just very typecast because she had a very stern looking face. But apparently, from what I've read about her, she's like literally the nicest person that anybody ever worked with.
That's how a lot of these like, typecast villains go. It seems like.
Yeah. From what I could read about her, nobody had a bad thing to say about her. She was just great, loved to laugh, and was real funny and nice and kind to people. And but just, I can't remember her ever playing a role that wasn't where she wasn't like the bad guy or supposed to be evil or mean. Owen Wilson. Yeah. I guess that would be the second Owen I would think of. On stage, would you play villains or heroes? Actually, most of my roles are neither, to be honest with you. If you take a look at, I'd say a good like 70% of the roles I got were what they call supporting roles. I've only played the lead in a show. Let me count. 1, 2, maybe 3 if you count Much Ado About Nothing. Or, sorry, 12th Night, I mean. You guess you could argue that Toby Belch is... he's not really, though. So, yeah, I would say, like, 2 shows in my entire history was I, like, a lead, either villain or, you know, the lead actor in the show. One of them would be Our Town, which was the most dialogue I ever had to remember for a show, memorize. Our Town, that Our Town narrator plays like 8 different characters and just kind of exist like he'll start out by narrating to the audience, talking to the audience about what's going on, and then he steps into like whatever scene it is and plays the preacher or the shop owner or whatever. He's always like a side character in almost every scene, so it was just a fuck ton of lines. And then I was I guess you would say like probably like a co-lead in The Odd Couple. I played Oscar Madison, and that's a show where the leads are Oscar and Felix. So every other show I've been in, and then the show that I guess I played the lead villain was Anna in the Tropics. I played Cheche in that, and that was really the only time I was like the lead bad guy in a show. Every other time I've been in a show, I've been a supporting character, supporting role. Sometimes like a large supporting role, but you know, that's kind of what I prefer to be anyway. I like the poster of you holding the snakes in the Bible. Yeah, that was a weird one. Yeah, that one ended up being in the newspaper just simply because I was the only one that would give the people down there like a decent photo shoot. I remember like the Fresno Bee, which was the newspaper that was in, came to one of our rehearsals, one of our like dress rehearsals to do a show or to do a story about the show, and they wanted to a couple of people to do photo shoots. And I remember the guy telling me that like the photos that he had gotten from other people were just like all like, you know, they didn't look great. And so I just started doing the show. Like we went down in this little gully that was surrounded by leaves and trees and stuff, and I just started doing one of my sermons and let him snap pictures of me, and that's how that picture got made. Because nobody else wanted to, like, it was on a college campus, so nobody else wanted to like make a fool of themselves, I guess. But I didn't give a shit. Give me that front page. But in that one, I was a supporting cast member in that. Definitely not a lead. So. Is there any drama in your experience doing stage shows back in the day? Always. Always, 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 always. Every show, always, yes. Unfortunately. I like to keep things relatively drama-free and stuff, but I will tell you something that's happened on every show that I've been on. Somebody starts dating somebody else. And when that happens, unless it was like people that were already together when they started, and even then, but like if you start doing a show and then all of a sudden you hear through the grapevine somebody's dating, you will simultaneously see most of the people that have been on a show roll their eyes and go, oh no. Because you know it's going to be some drama. You know there's going to be a breakup. You know there's going to be some threat to like, oh, I'm not going to be in the show. And then, you know, people are going to have to talk to them. Oh my God, it just sucks. So yes. I thought the whole class is usually plowing. I mean, it's different. Like, remember I said dating, not just humping. Well, it's because there's no for some reason about it. It's emotionally vulnerable. Being an actor and being in these scenes is emotionally vulnerable. You have to make yourself emotionally vulnerable in order to inhabit another character. So you've got everybody in the show emotionally vulnerable. Like I told you guys yesterday or the day before when we were talking about this, way more time goes into this than people think goes into it. So you spend a good month and a half just like living with this person, especially if it's a person that you're in a scene with, or a bunch of scenes with. You're going to be on stage working with that person. You're going to be backstage working with that person. You're going to be in the dressing room with that person. You're going to be in the parking lot with that person. You're going to go out to eat with that person. It's just, that's what it is. It's a very intimate work environment. And so as a result of that, it leads to a lot of people getting in these like ill-advised show relationships where it's like, hey, we're gonna play, but we're also in love now. It's like, no, you're not. I mean, I hate to tell you that, but you're not, you know? It's all those other things I just mentioned. You're literally like putting yourself into a like a like a voluntary emotionally vulnerable state every night with all these people every night, and you're working hella hard, and these are your like comrades and compatriots in that effort every night. I mean, the seeds are just ripe for an ill-advised relationship to bloom, and one almost always does, and it almost always is over before the show as well. That's my favorite part about it, is that show relationships last longer than the show, or last less time than the show that they're established in.
Yeah, it's like work relationships and school relationships are pretty inadvisable too.
But see, I gotta be honest with you. You're absolutely right, because bringing that emotionally compromised state into the workplace is oftentimes a bad thing. But I'm telling you this, it is way easier. Excuse me. It's way easier to like work with somebody if you didn't meet at that place.
Yeah.
I've worked like my one ancient exes, one of my first exes worked for Starbucks forever, and we were at the same store on and off. They didn't ever want us to be there long term, but that I've seen work out. I've seen people like date at work and not have it turn into a thing. Maybe it doesn't work out, but it's not drama for everybody else. But I'm telling you, dude, show relationships are they're like every bad inadvisable relationship between two incompatible people, but with a fast forward button hit, because the drama is turned up to 11. It would be like a relationship that without the show would probably last like a really regrettable 6 months where they were both miserable and then finally admitted it. But it happens over the course of like a month and a half, because like I said, everything on set is magnified due to the just inherent emotional instability on a set. And
So it's like equivalent to like a middle school relationship.
it really does. It really is, yeah. And I mean, and they know it too. It's very much, but it happens. I'd say there was one show where that didn't happen that I've been on in my entire life, and it was a show with mostly older people who were already married. And if it did go, maybe it did go on, but we didn't find out about it. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's very much how it was in like middle schools. Like relationships literally last like 3 days or some shit.
Yeah, I mean, some of these are a little longer than that, but they never outlast the term of the rehearsal and performance period. They're always over at some time, usually at the most critical time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where the stress level is high and you're really like you're about to launch into a 2 days of dress rehearsal, final dress rehearsal. You know what I mean? Right around there where the everybody and that's everybody on the show's angst and kind of. It's not like people are mean, but people are done fucking around by that time. It's like very serious. It gets very serious on set usually. When you're going into a final dress, because this is it, man. This is where you put all the work into it, and if the show looks and sounds like shit, you know, everybody's very serious, and that's usually when it happens. Somebody will say something to somebody else, like, get the fuck away, or leave me alone, or some shit, and then it's just either that or they bring it to rehearsal. Like they went home after last night's dress rehearsal all stressed out, and then they come in the next day, and I hear through the fucking grapevine of grapevines that Jimmy and Tammy aren't dating anymore. Oh, no, shocking. Shocking. I thought they were going to get married and have 1,000 babies, dude. Just kidding. I literally, by the way, did a lot of shows. I've never known one person who met their significant other on a show. To give you some, you know, context, like their long-term significant other. Not, you know, I've known people that have dated people on shows, but when we're talking about like somebody that ended up married, somebody that ended up with kids, not a single one of them ended up with another actor. So I think that's maybe something that is also true about those types of relationships, because I think that actors, by necessity, and I'm not saying maybe not every one of them, but I'll definitely include myself in this, we tend to be a little bit emotionally high strung. And also, I feel like big, needy personalities that can't share what, you know, we just can't share like that kind of status with anybody else. It's not like a status over the other person. It's just like we can't have another drama queen in our life because we're it, I guess.
You know, it seems to fuck like Hollywood relationships being in a movie together. Like Winona Ryder and Johnny Depp.
Oh yeah, well it's the same
Orson
shit.
Welles and
That is
that one
exactly.
chick. Yeah.
It's an analog to the stage. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same thing on a movie.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's probably even worse on a movie because
It seems like it breaks up marriages more like
Yeah.
less that people are meeting during movies, but like when they're cast together, it like causes angst.
Well, I mean, look at what's his name, Tom Holland and Zendaya. They met
Yeah.
on Spider-Man: No Way
Yeah.
Home or whatever, and now they're all dating. And I'd say there's like maybe a 25% chance that lasts a year. Bruce Willis and Demi Moore, they met on a set, met on a movie, got married, had kids together, and then broke up. I'm trying to remember, there's a bunch, but it's the same thing, dude.
It's a little bit more long term because
Yeah.
movies last longer than shows. But
That's very true. I mean, depending on the show. I guess if you're on a big Broadway production,
Yeah.
you're probably doing that way longer than you would be doing the rehearsal and prepare time for a movie. But yeah, movies are usually like 4 or 5 month shoot.
yeah, and then you
That's
gotta
a lot of
consider
time.
like the shooting versus the release.
Right.
It could be like 2 years.
And there's a lot of downtime
Yeah.
that doesn't exist on a play set too.
Yeah.
Like if you're there for rehearsal, you're either in back working and waiting for your scene to come up and working with somebody else on your scene. So you're not like just chilling usually. Whereas like a movie, you might show up on set thinking you're going to shoot that day and something goes wrong and you end up just chilling in your trailer all day.
Yeah.
And so does so and so.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn, yeah. And they are still together. I don't know if they met on set though. Maybe they did. I don't know.
But yeah.
There's always there's an exception to every rule, but just and this is not some like sage wisdom that only I know either. Let it be known that every last person that I've ever acted with knows better than to get in a relationship. This is well known. It's like it's known amongst actors as a cursed thing. Like you will have people literally go up and talk to people. I've done it before. I've been like, dude, this show's gonna be over in like 2 weeks. You're gonna come on, man. Just take it slow so things don't get heated, so you don't get all busted up in the middle of the show, or whatever. Actors will straight out warn each other. It's like, yeah, let's see what you're doing. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows it's a bad idea because everybody knows the things I just told you. Everybody knows how incredibly vulnerable you are at rehearsal, especially given the play. It can be even worse, but every play requires emotional vulnerability. To be able to inhabit another character requires it. But certain plays, serious, oh my God, those are even the worst too. Those create like the more serious and dramatic and sad and angsty a play is. It's almost like the relationships follow the pattern of the show. So it's like if the show is overall very angry, then it'll be a very angry relationship. It's just because all of those emotions are brought to the surface and displayed to a group of other people who you have to learn to implicitly trust because you wouldn't be that way in front of most people. You know what I mean? Well, I'm talking about when you're learning, because there's a double vulnerability to that. When you're just now starting up a role, you're ultra vulnerable because you don't feel like you exist in that person's shoes yet, and so you're trying things out, and that requires you to put yourself out there in a way that's like, just not usual for people. People don't usually bear their emotions to one another. It's usually the opposite, in a work environment when they're coworkers. You're usually supposed to try and keep that stuff hidden away. Now, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. Maybe the world would be a little better if people didn't have to, but that's just the way it is. It's the exact opposite on a set. On a set, you're just encouraged to really dig deep and find that connective tissue between you and the character you're playing. And that's an exercise in vulnerability.
I was just thinking, remember that lady from Shanghai with Orson Welles where he literally turns his back on his dying wife's character?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, we're not divorced yet?
Yeah, let me just twist the knife a little bit. Yes, let me twist the knife. I love Orson Welles. He was such an irascible piece of shit. Even as a young man, he's one of those dudes that you can see that his final form was what he became.
Yeah.
Like, even as a young, fit man, you can see that it was never his lot in life to remain young and fit. He got to taste young fitness in his 20s, and then he became what he was meant to be. Any family or friends that you cherish? What kind of question is that? No, I don't cherish anybody or anything.
Heart of stone.
My heart is made of tar pitch. Like, what kind of question is that? Do you have any, meaningful relationships where you actually care about a person? Like, even if I was, a person that was incapable of that, I would lie to you and tell you that I was. I'm brimming with hate. Question is to Harry Rodman. So you're breaking a rule. You're having a side conversation, and you got a live demonstration on why they're banned. Because I just wasted 30 seconds to a minute of everybody's time responding to something that wasn't aimed at me in my own chat room. You want to have a conversation with whoever you were responding to, go do it on your own time. Don't waste people's time in here. And same goes for you, Harry. Watch your shit. No side combos. Get each other's deets. If you're going to do a side conversation, make it be your Twitter handle so you guys can go to DMs. That's exactly why they're banned. People say I'm draconian, but you just saw why they're banned. I just read a thing, assumed it was for me, and wasted everybody's time for a minute and counting. Does a response to an inquiry count as a side convo? If somebody's making an inquiry at you and it is not directly involved in a conversation that you and I are having or that is surrounding you or something, then you're having a side conversation. So you can if you and I are engaged in a heated back and forth and people are saying LOL cynic, you're so shit, and you were like, hey, shut up. That's one thing, because that's all part of what we're doing here. But if you're having a total conversation about some other dude in the chat's family while I'm talking about some whole other topic and the whole chat is talking about some whole other topic, that's a side combo. So if you get addressed in that way, if somebody goes at cynic, what color is the sky where you live, or whatever the fuck, and it has nothing to do with anything, just don't answer. Then you don't get in trouble. They do for adding, which is also banned. You can't add other people. You can't really even at me because it's just an attention-seeking device. You can't have conversations with each other. YouTube needs a whisper. Yeah, it needs to bring back its old DMs. You used to have YouTube DMs where you could send a DM to another creator and blah, blah, blah. And, you could just, if you really met somebody in here, I'm not trying to stifle that, but I can't have it as part of the show. It's not interesting to anybody but you and the other person. So when you meet like that, slip them your Twitter handle and, you know, why did they get rid of that? They got rid of a lot of things that made a whole lot of fucking sense.
I guess it must have been like harassment or something.
Just less for them to police.
Yeah.
It makes total sense that creators should be able to collaborate on the platform together, but they were probably just like looking down the pipe of like, well, we got to hire 100 people to look at these DM complaints, and decided to just do away with it. Same thing with like the 5-star rating system and video responses. Like video responses are the biggest. Like people that have never experienced YouTube with a video responses, you guys don't have any fucking clue what you were missing out on. That was so much fun.
It was like threads. It was like how it is with Reddit when you like cross post and shit. Like it was all nestled together and you could see the
You would watch a video, and then right underneath, the first thing that you would see, if the person had it enabled, which it was a thing from the very jump you could turn off if you felt like you were being harassed. So I don't know why they got rid of it, but you could enable it, and that would let anybody post a video that would show up on their channel, but it would also show up under your video, and it would be ranked by most viewed. So like, you know, you'd have a huge video, and one of the ways that you could like make content is you could try and be the best video response underneath that video. Have a lot, and you know, you make a video about the same topic. Most people enforced that. They wouldn't let you just like pin whatever video you wanted to their shit, like if it was on topic or a response to them, and it created this whole community thing, and it created this way for smaller creators to get big, really big. Because like sometimes a bigger creator would see a smaller creator's response video, do a response to it, and then all of a sudden you got another couple thousand subs or something. And it was just like a great feature. Uniformly, everybody loved it, and they took it away.
Even though the same thing basically still happens.
Yeah.
It's just not as like connected. It's like the creator, even if they were being quote unquote harassed, they're still gonna see it pop up in their content ID that someone's covering their video.
Right.
It's like the same with like getting rid of the downvotes. It's like you can still see the
Well, see,
percentages.
content ID wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah.
They hadn't like implemented content ID and shit like that back in the day. So there was really no way to know if somebody was, unless you searched yourself and they tagged you in the keywords or whatever, or the title. But that wasn't a problem, because if somebody was talking about something you said, they'd put it as a video response to you and you'd see it. Yeah, there was that, and then YouTube, like your YouTube channel pages used to be insanely customizable. Like you could change the color scheme, change the fonts on it, add your own limited HTML stuff. You could have like different videos, like a whole playlist that would cycle through and autoplay for people and blah blah blah. There was just a bunch of like customizability, like where things appeared on your page, and it was more like, you know, a lot of you won't even remember, it was like MySpace back in the day versus Facebook, right? Where Facebook is more homogenous, everybody's page kind of looks the same. MySpace used to be like, you land on somebody's page and then they could go nuts, sometimes over nuts with it, you know, and just like a mess of animated GIFs and flashing backgrounds and shit. But, you know, I remember my channel page for the longest time, I picked this dark burnt orange and black. And I had this really neat kind of contrast page that was easy on the eyes back in the day, because I picked a darker background, and, you know, and now, you know, everybody's YouTube channel has to look the same. You get to choose your banner, but it's in the same place as everybody else's banner. Yeah, customizing thumbnails was a hard thing. Like, people even got to the point where they were gaming the system because they figured out that the system would pull a thumbnail from the exact center point of your video. And so what people would do is they'd make a video and they would edit a tiny little 2-second thumbnail into the center of the video that would just appear while their voice kept playing behind it, so that after the video went, that was stupid. That was a dumb workaround. So after the video went live, the system would automatically select that 3 frames and make one of them the, you know what I mean? the background. And that was the only way you could get a thumbnail on your video back in the day. And I think that was largely due to the fact that they were afraid of, like, how are we going to police this? How are we going to, like, keep people from just putting dicks and titties?
Or clickbait. Even though that's their fucking what they live for now is clickbait.
Yeah. They Tyler Durden. Yeah, they did. Yeah. The little 1 or 2 frames of porn or whatever. Yeah. I mean, that was the only way to get a uniform looking thumbnail on your shit back in the day. So everybody that cared did it. Or everybody that was trying to, like, you know, monetize their channel hard or whatever did it.
Your phone's getting a little wet.
It's just sitting in the...
Yeah.
It's sitting on the leather thing, so it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about it. YouTube Kids is cancer. It does more mental harms to kids. Well, yeah, because it's like TV, but infinity TV. So you take everything that's bad about TV, which we know. You know, the studies are in on hyper exposure to what I would have called TV, which meant, you know, somewhere between 5 and 20 channels of television. And that you've taken that, which has been demonstrably shown to be harmful to children's development, and you intensify it. You make it even less coherent, less cohesive, more brain tickly. So, I mean, it's one thing to psychologically manipulate adults. Adults, at the very least, have had a chance to develop some kind of inoculation against such things and to make their own minds up. Children, though, you don't really propagandize children, because children are, like, they're designed to believe everything they're told for good reason. They're soft, tiny, and stupid, which is a good way of getting yourself snatched up by a fucking giant eagle, or eaten by a crocodile, or fucking found at the bottom of a fucking gorge. Yeah, they're tiny, they're clumsy, and they're stupid. And I'm not trying to undermine kids or whatever, I'm just telling you.
Yeah,
that's why their brains
are moosh.
Their brains are developing every second. They're watching everything you do, and they're learning little parts of what it takes to be, you know, an adolescent and then grown-up personality. But that whole trip from childhood through adolescence, that's what that's about. Like, that period of your life is where you learn how to deal with people, where you learn what kind of person you're going to be. And it really is just snatches of what you've seen in a lot of cases. You know, if you only had, you know, your mom and dad to look at for male and female role models, chances are you scalped a lot off of them, you know. No matter what, you scalped a lot off of your parents or whoever raised you. That's just the way it works.
The whole idea of how relationships are supposed to be.
Yep.
And
interactions, relationships, how this is supposed to work and how that is supposed to work. Apparently most of your personality is fixed in the first 5 years of life. We're not talking about personality here, though. We're talking about the literal development of your higher cognitive function. At what age did you realize that your parents are just regular people and they don't know everything? This is a hard one for me to answer, because I really don't know if I ever thought that. And I'm not trying to denigrate my parents, but my parents, you say a lot of things about them, but they really didn't try and sell themselves as like the font of all wisdom. My parents were both very willing to say, I don't know. And in fact, both of them did so routinely and would help me look things up. Like, if I had a question that they couldn't answer about science or politics, or usually not politics, but you get my drift, some kind of like geopolitical issue, and I had some kind of precocious question about it, and they didn't know, they weren't They didn't like come off that way to me. So they made me very comfortable saying like, I don't know. And so I don't know if there was ever really a time where I looked at I certainly idolized my parents like every child does, but I don't know if part of that was ever like they're infallible and they know everything. But yeah, my parents were very much in tune with like teaching me how to go find my own answers to things, which I'm very thankful for. They would take me to the library a lot. They owned a lot of, you know, what passed for the Wikipedia back in the day, which would be like Encyclopedia Britannica. My parents had a very expensive full set of Encyclopedia Britannica and all the supplements, and it filled a whole bookshelf, and that shit was up through most of my childhood as I remember it.
That was the only way.
I mean, and to be honest with you, when it comes to just basic shit,
Yeah.
just as good as Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that's bad about it is that you know, if
It's
it was
static.
it's static, right?
Yeah.
It can't be updated. But I'm just saying, like, for generalized knowledge about, like, you know, how many feet per inches or how many inches per yards or a mathematical equation or how does this animal live or where does this animal live? You could go grab the volume of Encyclopedia Britannica with the letter on it that, you know, your subject started with, and you can find something about it.
Yeah. It's like, that's what people don't get is like, there's some things people are like, oh my god, this library's destroying books. It's like they destroy like the outdated ones.
They to make room for
New ones.
stock, or a lot of times libraries will get like huge amounts of copies of a single book
Yeah.
to make sure that it fits demand, and then over 10 20 years nobody cares anymore,
Yeah.
and so they only need one or two of them and they get rid of 30 of them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times these libraries don't just like outright go straight to burn books. They'll have community sales and stuff where they put it out
At
for
some point,
50
if no
cents a
one takes
book.
It, then
Yeah, if nobody takes it and it's a book that's torn up a little bit or not, you know,
Yeah.
you've already got 3 copies in there, they're going to destroy them. I mean, what do you want them to do? Bury them in a fucking endless time capsule or something? But yeah, no, my parents taught me how to use a glossary, how to look things up in a dictionary, and how to look things up in an encyclopedia, and how to go to the library and use the Dewey Decimal System and find my book, and use the librarian's help to find books on a subject. And dude, I knew how to do all that shit by the time I was like 7 years old. 6 years old, I was already doing it, you know? So, yeah, I really don't know that I ever had that, like, infallibility thing.
Dude, I was like pissed at my mom when I figured out Santa wasn't real. I
Oh, yeah.
got mad. Like, you lied to me.
You felt duped.
Yeah.
I felt duped too, but I don't know. I wasn't mad. I was mad at myself for being silly. I remember, like, because I did you ask your mom?
This is how I started it. I said, would you ever lie to me? My mom's like, no. It's like, well, why do these Santa toys have barcodes on them? And she's like, oh, well, Santa's not real. I'm like, you lied to me. You told me you would never lie to me.
Damn, dude, you set the trap, bro. You activated your trap card on your mom. Dude, wow. Yeah, there was no way she could win that one. Mine was just I went at mine smooth, because we were in 2 vehicles. We had the truck and the Jeep, and we were down at Pismo. And I was probably 6 or 7 years old. I don't know, maybe a little older, 7 or 8. And we'd end up splitting up. My little sister was in the truck with my dad, passed out, and I was in the Jeep with my mom, and we were both driving back to the campground. And I gave my mom the 8-year-old version of, all right, Mom, since it's just you and me, will you just level with me about something? Or whatever the kid version of that is. She's like, sure. And I said, it's this Santa thing. And I knew immediately because the way she sighed.
Yeah.
And it was really a dirty deed on my part, because I know how my mom is with secrets.
Yeah.
She can't keep one. She will try valiantly, But if she's asked directly something and she knows it, she's going to tell it. So I just put her on the spot. I knew immediately before she even answered because the beginning of her answer was, and I was like, oh, fuck. Santa's a fucking lie. So she told me about it, and then she was like, look, do me a favor. Don't tell your little sister, huh? Let her get some joy out of it. Let her at least get as many years as you got out of it. I was like, all right, deal. I was like, wait a minute. I get to lie to my little sister? Well, yeah, about this, yeah. Sold. It's now my goal that they believe in Santa till they're 20.
I got one of my friends, like, all the way up to, like, 5th grade. They were still believing.
Oh, man. Oh, man. Yeah, that's a late bloomer right there. Yeah, by the 5th grade, we all knew. We all knew the score, man. We knew that mom and dad were Santa. We knew we had to, instead of sending stupid letters off, we needed to nag mom and dad. Because that's way better than sending a letter.
Yeah.
You know, you can get a letter, you read it, you go, huh, that was nice and interesting. Maybe I'll consider that. But you got to hear it every day. I want a Red Ryder carbine actual BB gun with a compass of the stock. When I found out I lost all my friends by fighting with them about it. Yeah, see, I didn't even really have a whole thing. Like, here's the thing. Like, by the time I asked my mom, like I said, I was already like 7. And so, like, it already wasn't cool to do the Santa thing. Like, no 7-year-old boy wanted to be sitting on Santa's lap anyway. So if anybody brought it up, I would just say, like, bro, you know Santa's bullshit, right? You know, it's just your mom and dad bringing that shit, right? You keep saying Santa brought you something, and that's... Oh, yeah, I know that. I don't know. Oh, no. It's like, okay, all right. Just had to make sure. Man, that is funny, dude. I love that you rope-a-doped your mom that hard, dude. You got her, man. Dude, I keep getting drops of water on my cigarette. It's like nature's trying to tell me to quit smoking. Okay, fine, I quit.
Yeah.
It's coming from the bottom of this table somehow. I don't know where. I guess
it's like all soaked in.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, it is. You're right. It's just Jesus.
Yeah, they decided not to invest in gutters in this house.
Gutters or like any kind of coverings or anything, man. It's just like, whoa. Whatever, bro. Whatever, bro. Thanks, clam bake. Santa Claus is a really odd phenomena in general. Yeah, I agree. It is kind of strange. I mean, it's like taking advantage of what we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody knows that kids will believe anything you tell them. And so it's like the whole Santa thing is a way to make, like, inject magic into their lives as if the world isn't magical enough.
It also puts it out of the parents' control. So, like, if they can't afford something, it's Santa's fault.
That is true.
And it's a finger wag, like, oh, if you're naughty, you're going to get coal.
That is true. It's a useful little fiction for kids, but yeah, it does. I mean, I guess it's a good thing, though. Like, ultimately, I wouldn't take away the Santa phenomenon because I think, like, kids have got to learn that a lot of things in the world are bullshit.
Yeah, it teaches critical thinking.
Yeah, and there's no better way to learn that than to learn that your parents have been duping you for your whole life. Well, if my parents are going to lie to me about this, maybe I ought to really question anything. He's a euphemism for God. Yeah, but it's interesting that parents introduce such a euphemism that children literally have to challenge and defeat. It seems like contrary to the idea of raising a religious person. Like, you've got to use your own intuition and your own curiousness to overcome your belief in this analog for God. That doesn't seem to kind of support the thesis very well, you know?
Yeah, my mom didn't even bother with the Easter Bunny. She's just like, I'm giving you your Easter basket.
My parents did the Easter Bunny.
Yeah.
They did the whole fucking 9 yards with the Easter Bunny as well. But not as long.
Yeah.
That stopped when I was littler. Or at least, like, you know, I stopped believing in the Easter Bunny way earlier than Santa.
Yeah, especially plastic eggs. It's like,
Yep.
dude, the real eggs are nasty. Because, like, if your parents hide one of those hard boiled eggs too well, you're just gonna fucking step into a trap one day.
Yeah. It's true. Stinky hard-boiled egg. Stinky month-old 1,000-year egg, dude. No, but I mean, I'd be lying if I told you that Santa wasn't a critical step in my journey towards atheism. Like my ability to question dogma and to be a skeptical person, you know, was very much helped along by the experience of learning that Santa wasn't real. I don't know if it was the foundational thing, but it helped. Definitely alerted me to the existence of infinite amounts of bullshit and chicanery.
I have one failsafe. Like, I will believe in God again if one of my prayers is answered. I had asked God when I was like 6 years old, let me live as long as that tree. And that tree was huge. So if I live to like 200, then I'll believe in God.
Damn. Well, there you go. That's a high bar, but hey.
That was my most genuine prayer when I was the most religious, so.
Let me live as long as that tree.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. At what age did you start questioning the existence of God? Definitely in my, like, late tweens, early teens. Like, by 11, 12, 13, I was really, like, probably way closer to an agnostic, like a completely impartial agnostic, functionally. I didn't believe, but I didn't necessarily disbelieve. I would say that it wasn't until I was about, well, I was in my 20s before I started calling myself an atheist. But I would say I was probably around 15, 14 when I really kind of like abandoned the notion of God altogether.
I did it a lot earlier. I did it in like 4th grade.
Well, there you go. I was a late bloomer. What do you want me to do?
But my mom took me to some pretty stupid Sunday schools.
Yeah. I went to a couple of stupid ones too, but
I had to stay at them a lot longer than you did.
yeah. Is your mother religious? Yes. Both of my parents are nominally religious. I think my mom is a more sincere religious person, and I think my dad is religious for social lubricant. But I guess the whatever, the motive doesn't really matter. So yes, both of my parents are religious. Never had to go to a Christian summer camp, thank goodness. Never really had to go to church ever. So my parents were from, like, my mom's Bible used to be the what did they call it? Like it was a Jesus Bible or something. It was a Bible.
Oh, with the highlights. And
yeah,
stuff.
It was a Bible from the '60s, and there was a huge like Jesus movement in the 60s. They used to call hippies friends of Jesus. That's what they called themselves. Hippies didn't self-apply the hippie term. And so they were very much about like being Jesus-like and protesting and nonviolence and blah 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 blah. And they used that aspect of Jesus's character. And so my mom had one of those Bibles, and there were very strict rules in that movement, which I think was the movement that my mom ascribed most to throughout my childhood. She was not a typical evangelical Christian. She was a very believe whatever you believe, and it can't be forced on you, and here, I'll tell you what I believe. But so my parents, if I didn't want to go to church, they were never like, you're going to church. Just be like, all right. If I didn't like it at a Sunday school, they didn't make me stay there. They didn't force me to pray at night or read the Bible or any of that. And, that was a very different kind of religion. I'm probably pretty lucky I grew up with parents with that type of religion. Because, I'm kind of allowed for questioning. Was not christened and I was not baptized. I did an altar call one time when I was probably around 7 or 8 years old, where they do that. They did like this children's altar call where you give your life to Jesus or whatever, or ask Jesus to be your savior or whatever it was. And so I did that. That's the most ceremonial thing I ever did in religion. Never had a baptism, never had a confirmation or a naming ceremony or any of that shit. In fact, I honestly didn't know until, relatively recently in my life that non-Catholics even did that, confirmation and baptism. Like, even Baptists, I thought, just kind of like didn't bother.
Yeah, I think that whole like recalled baptisms from the Catholic Church is a scam to just get people to come back in. It's like, oh, we're gonna say these baptisms were invalid, so you come back in and get a real baptism.
Probably so. Pay for another baptism.
Because it's been 2 now. There was like a second fucking priest that had died that like, oh, all of his baptisms are invalid.
Oh, really? It's going to become a thing now.
Yeah.
This is how they're going to start juicing people around the world, is the new Catholic scam.
Yeah.
After a priest dies, they go like, oh, it turns out he
said we instead of I.
Yeah.
So
he said something wrong, or he wasn't properly fully confirmed as a priest, so you all got to come back. And you got to get your like dead loved ones rebaptized too.
Yeah. Then it gives you a crisis, and then you got to come back and talk to the priest, and yada yada yada. It's a scam, man. And then grown-up baptism is worse, because then you got to get the dunk. It's not like when you're a baby where you just get the sprinkle on your head.
True. In England, Christianity is kind of benign. No such thing. No, it isn't. Even outwardly benign, moderate amounts of religiosity in a civilization, it's used as justification for horrible things. So you'll notice that religion is pretty benign in the UK, unless it comes to talking about immigrants and Muslims moving into the UK. Then I bet you hear from a lot of religious little Englanders, don't you?
Yeah, it's just smaller, so they can't be as loud with their beliefs.
Religion is cancerous, no matter how benign it may seem. It's like a mole that you should always remove.
Yeah, it's
because any little dose of it allows a little pocket of unreality in a person's head, and can be used to justify any number of cruelties and savageries, as we can see. I mean, whatever your particular flavor of religion is, you'll find cruelty and savagery at the heart of it, or at least in the history of it. Even Buddhism. I mean, Buddhists slaughter each other in the thousands. They slaughter Muslims, and Muslims slaughter Buddhists, and Christians. I mean, do we need to even talk about it?
Yeah, even the fucking Jains that are all like peaceful and like fucking brushing off bugs on their chairs and stuff, they still have shit.
Yep. So you just gotta like At some point, you just got to learn that it's a bad deal. It dulls the mind. It creates pockets of fantasy in a person's life where the assuredness of knowledge should be. It tears families apart. It tears relationships apart. It foments a sense of anti-science that's very easy to latch onto when people want to make excuses for being lazy or not wanting to change the way they live. In fact, the Christian Bible and other religious texts are often used as some sort of example that man has dominion on the earth, and so it's here for him to do what he wants with because it's a temporary thing. I mean, that's not something that's unique to Christianity. It's something that exists in a lot of religions. And so it's used to justify dumping toxic waste and hunting animals to extinction because, hey, God put it here for us to enjoy and to use. And all of this is temporary anyway, because pretty soon, he's going to come back in some form and end all of this, and it's not going to matter anyway, so we may as well use it while we got it.
And then it creates this false morality, too. It's like, well, I just have to ask for forgiveness, and then I can do whatever I want.
Right. Right. It actually skews your moral compass into and sometimes it's different too. Sometimes it's like it doesn't make people into people that do bad things and then justify it with prayer. It can go the other way too. Because the morality is so complex, it can create these huge like guilt complexes in people where they're guilty for normal things. They feel guilty for things that are just normal human behavior, and that creates a feedback loop that keeps them as part of the church. Just this overarching, overwhelming sense of constant guilt.
That's like a whole subset of OCD is like religious guilt.
Could be, few Christians I know that actually acknowledge climate change just say that Jesus will come back before the world end. Well, yeah, I mean that's what they've been saying since Jesus left the first time, if he ever existed. That's been the meme. You know how many Christians have lived and died? How many generations of Christians have lived and died that said right up until they took their last breath, like, I'm in the end times, I will definitely see Jesus come back. Every last one of them have been dead ass wrong. But for some reason, the meme continues. I'm not an authority on this stuff, but I remember listening to a lot of philosophers and stuff, back in the kind of anti-religious early days of YouTube, and kind of my coming into my own as an atheist and learning how to do argument against religiosity and stuff. And you watch a lot of the Four Horsemen, as we called them. And I remember Richard Dawkins in particular liked to compare religion to a virus that's passed congenitally, from father to son, mother to daughter. A virus of the mind. So just like it kind of ties into his whole meme theory. This idea of an idea that expands beyond its scope because it becomes culturally relevant to people and becomes repeated so many times that it earns a place of reverence amongst people. And it's kind of all tied into that. And it's like this idea that religion is and if you look at how religion recruits people, it all bears that out. Does religion typically target people that are fucking doing fine in their lives? No. Do they do a whole lot of outreaches in like the Hamptons and stuff where there's a bunch of rich people living, or in Beverly Hills? No. They make soup kitchens, which, like, good for them, because if they're the only soup kitchen in town, at least people get to eat. But you know what that comes at the cost of? They proselytize to you while you eat. They proselytize to you in the line. There'll be somebody walking up and down the line reading the Bible and asking you if you want to, give your life to Jesus and blah, 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 blah. That's who they go after. People who are desperate, people who are sad, people who are lonely, people who are, have a hole in their life.
Yeah, fucking AA is like a whole religion thing. that's court mandated in some cases.
Yep. I went voluntarily to, and it wasn't AA. What's the families one called? Al-Anon.
Yeah.
So I went to Al-Anon, which is for families of alcoholics. And I went voluntarily one time because, I grew up with alcoholics. And the religious propaganda took about 20 minutes to come out. And it wasn't like direct, but it was very much like, oh yeah, and then this one here is, you have to recognize that there's a power higher than yourself. And that immediately became God. It doesn't say that in the literature, but that immediately became God and Jesus and this and that and the other thing. And everybody went around the table and it was all about God. And I was like, okay. Now, as helpful as this might be to some people, like I consider it a waste of time to, be proselytized to. Like I'm not looking to be sold that fucking fantasy.
Like the overall idea is decent. It's like saying some things are out of your control.
It's like the Washingtonians. You remember?
Yeah.
So the Washingtonians were a pre-Alcoholics Anonymous group of, it was only men, but back in the day it was mostly men that had this problem anyway. And it had no religious overtones, and it had a lot of the same rules, but it was completely atheistic. It was, had a lot of the same rules where people kept their confidence and stuff. They would go around in a circle and talk about the things that they'd done and how many days they'd been clean. A lot of the Alcoholics Anonymous stuff was established by these guys called the Washingtonians. But it didn't have that poison pill of religion mixed into it. And then eventually it did. Not in that society, but in the next, the movement became religious. My church gives out food to all homeless without a sermon. The fact that your church is giving out the food is a sermon. You don't have to have somebody there preaching to the homeless people. They know where they're going. They know who's buttering their bread. It's at your church, right?
It's not like they have no fucking signage or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like you're just like an anonymous group that they don't know who's doing it, but thank goodness you're here. They know it's coming out of your church. That's a sermon.
Yeah, it's like,
who else if not us would give them food? I'm fine with that. I didn't say I have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is the fact that you giving them food comes at the cost of you trying to recruit them into a religion that poisons their minds with a fantasy. I don't think that's a fair trade. I think if you really genuinely care, you ought to give, regardless of whether or not it's going to serve your church. Dude, these arguments, like, do I believe that religion has never done any good in history? No, I think religion has done good. But you know what I think is behind that? The good things that have happened in the sphere of religion, the artistic works that have been commissioned, that have, lasted and become some of the most memorable and beautiful things that you can ever see created by the hand of a person. People that are fed when otherwise they wouldn't have been, people that are clothed when otherwise they wouldn't have been. There's been a lot of good done by religion, but that does not erase the negativity of religion. It just doesn't. You don't get to cancel out the Crusades and Christian rock and Christian rap. Wholly, ridiculously medieval negative attitudes about LGBTQ people, racism, classism, all this crap. You know what I mean? And the fact that it literally poisons people against rational thought. And there are any number of irreligious organizations that provide food to the homeless, food banks and such, with no religious pretext at all. You're not going into a church to get it. You know what I mean? You go to a food bank that's owned by the county, and there's no religious pamphletry when you're waiting in line for your basket. You just wait in line. If there's any pamphlets, it's like, here's how to get some social services. Here's how many times you can come a week. Here are the days that we do these drives, blah, 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 blah. If that's possible, then what argument would you have ladling religion on top of it? Ladling all those things that I talked about. Anti-woman rhetoric, anti-gay person rhetoric, anti-other rhetoric, anti-Muslim, anti-Buddhist, anti-pretty much anybody that ain't a Christian. And you're telling me that, like, giving somebody food with no pretext is worse than giving them food with this heaping helping of hate ladled over the top of it? Like, no, thank you.
Yeah, it's PR.
Right. Like, no, thank you. Like, knowing that you can give somebody a loaf of bread with no cross on it and no cross hanging over your head and no church building and no religious pamphlet makes me wonder, like, what's the benefit of having that scoop of religion thrown up on top, if not to just funnel more people's money and time into the huckster scam that is religion? I like, think about what's at the core of, like, every religion. At the core of every, I don't care what you are, right? Well, maybe not every religion, but every mainstream religion, certainly Christianity and Islam, as we're talking about it. I'm an agent of God. Give me money and support my life so that I can continue to be an agent of God. At the very core of it is a scam, a self-reinforcing feedback loop of money where anybody who declares themselves so and gathers enough followers can be like, hey, you're not giving me money. Never mind the fact that I drive around in a nice car and live in a nice ass house. You're not giving me money, you're giving God money. As if God's got a wallet, as if God's got a bank account, he's looking to fucking spend that money. Like, what? And that's pretty much every goddamn religion. Every religion's got a pastor that's supported with donations. It's not just prosperity gospel. If you go to a church with a pastor at it, 9 times out of 10, probably even more, that pastor is wholly supported by the congregation. It doesn't matter if they're preaching prosperity gospel or old-time religion. You know that to be true, too. They get a parsonage, is what they call it. Ask your pastor about it if you don't believe me. Go to church and ask him what his parsonage is. He'll tell you. That's his house that you paid for. And you continuously pay for. Hello. Yeah, God's just bad with money, man. You know? As if money ever comes into the equation with God. If the God of the Bible was real, as if money would ever come into the equation. I mean, you heard what Jesus had to say about rich people, right? The people that wrote the Bible had no love for rich men. Yeah, the Old Testament God, right? We're talking the New Testament now. The Old Testament God loved his money and his conquering and his stealing of land and his rape and pillage and all of that. But the New Testament, pretty much the opposite, right? It's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Meaning that it's impossible. It's literally impossible for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. And so it means that if you're a rich fuck or somebody that's well off and has more money than they need to get by and spends it on themselves, doesn't funnel that money back into the church, you're going straight to hell. We're all richer than anyone from that time, even if dirt poor, so none of us can fit through. Yeah, but that's the example, though. The point of that example is that everybody falls short of that, and that you should always be striving not to gain more personal things for yourself, but to give away as much of what you can as much of what you make as you can. That's the idea behind that. No, no. I mean, you can't just say this is relative and this is not relative. Religious people give up that ability. Because once you bring your fantasy book into the real world, you don't get to start cherry picking what's real and what isn't out of the book. You're telling me that this book is real. This book is not just a piece of fiction written by a bunch of people a long time ago and recontextualized and rearranged and all of that several times in history into its modern form. You're telling me it's not that. You're telling me it's the word of some divine being through prophets on earth. So you're giving up the ability to go like, well, this is real, but this is metaphor. No, 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 no. No. You're the one that's questioning what's real in the first place. These are all questions that you're having internally that have nothing to do with reality. And so there's no impetus put upon a non-believer such as myself to even engage you in the conversation. You're the one that's got to prove that the conversation is even worthy of having. You've got to bring something that I haven't heard before. That's not easily defeated logically. Well, isn't that one of the problems with calling it God's word, though? An update to God's word, right? And it's happened multiple times. You probably have a King James Bible in your house if you're a religious person. It's called the King James Bible because during the reign of King James, the Bible was rewritten. Things were dropped out of it, passages were reworded. So it's not even the same Bible that was written, that came before that. It's a completely different book. So why would you need an update to it? If it's the unerring, unchanging, perfect work of God, God needed a software upgrade because he's perfect. That doesn't make any sense. If you're perfect, you don't need a software upgrade. The land of milk and honey was geographically Israel, which God promised to give to the Jewish slaves of Egypt. Oops, there are other people living there. Yep. Let's uproot them and create an anachronism and a complete fucking oppositional state to the entire region, and let's back it with a bunch of nukes, and all because some shit in a book. It's like, I mean, come on, dude. Yeah, Mel Brooks, when he drops the third tablet, nothing goes over my head, Cynic. Dude, I catch everything. I catch it all. The Bible can't speak about 90% of your life. What does God think about appliances? What does God think about cars? What does God think about modern mining equipment? What does God think about you sitting in an office all day in a cubicle? What does God think about insurance? What does God think about, modern land ownership and landlords? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Whatever. You got to go to church to find out what God thinks about that. Then the guy whose bills you pay with your donations when the collection plate comes around, he'll tell you, because he can understand that ancient Bronze Age tablet better than you can. Welcome to church. Do the Orb of Destiny. Do you remember when Trump and Saudi Prince bin Salman were like charging up off of the Orb of Destiny? And somebody like pulled out their phone and snapped a picture. Right as like the evil power was. Biden hasn't been invited. They would not invite Biden into the orb room because they know he would sully the orb. He would poop on the orb immediately. He'd have an accident in the orb room. So he hasn't even been invited, dude. Biden doesn't even get to see the Orb of Destiny. He doesn't get to see the Dragon Ball, dude. He's too stupid. He'll fuck it up. He'll trip, break it, poop on it, cuss it out or something, make the entity that lives within it angry. He's not invited. He does not properly show reverence to the orb. Yeah, he'd try and smell it. He'd be like, the orb would be like, ugh, get off of me. Kill everybody in the room. Stupid Biden had to sniff the orb. Oh my God, dude. We watched Biden stumbling and bumbling through a press conference yesterday on the grease trap, by the way. It was pretty much a whole ass grease trap dedicated to the whole Ukraine crap. Just watching some of the news and just giving our opinions on it and whatnot. And we ended up watching like Biden's big press conference where he basically said nothing. And man, dude, he's barely... I don't know what they're going to do in 2024, dude. It is going to be shocking to me if they try and put that dude out in front of people and send him to debates and like have him do stump speeches and stuff. He is so far beyond like just barely able to get through a scripted piece of content. Like if you want proof of that dude, and I'm not even trying to be like ageist or whatever, like go watch his latest that Ukraine press conference from yesterday. Dude, he is barely on script. He can barely do it. You can tell he barely understands the things that he's saying. He's literally just being like handled at this point by his script writers and his press secretary and all that. He's just, it's awful. He's way too old, man, yes. Oh my God, dude. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do. I will tell you this. If they're going to do anything, like try and do a Biden is stepping down for family reasons or whatever, and have Kamala be the candidate, they're going to do it after the midterms. So look to after the midterms because they're going to want to do that probably early. They don't want it to be a shock. They want to have time to means test the idea and see if it's not going to work. And so they're going to need as much time as possible. So if you want my call on it, just based on like past electoral cycles and when big news drops about things, not that I've ever seen a president resign for health reasons in my lifetime. When we're talking about like, responses to big things, big policy changes, those sorts of things tend to come after the party has consolidated around the midterms and all of that. And then boom, they drop this idea right before the election to see how people bite on it. And so I think that you're going to start hearing a changing in rhetoric coming out of the Biden administration because I really don't see it being possible. I literally don't see it being possible. I honestly think Trump has declined in the, 6 or so years that he's been running and stuff, but he's still sharp enough that if you put him, like if he ends up being the candidate, which I think is entirely possible, and you put him, on a debate stage with Joe Biden, he's going to get eviscerated, bro. Not even on policy, not even on substance, just on like charisma. He's eviscerated. And I think everybody that is working in his campaign that does any kind of studying of this knows it and is desperately looking for ways around it. And I think ultimately the only way around it is to have old Joe step down. Because he just can't do it anymore, man. He can't even, he can't give a press conference. And see, this is the thing about a press conference. I want you to do something for me. If you're interested in this sort of thing, and maybe you're not. But if you find this type of thing interesting, go look at a Ronald Reagan press conference. And you will find... Now, when Ronald Reagan did start to go a little bit batty towards the end of his presidency, and they hit him a lot. But if you want to see an older guy... Because here's the thing. He had teleprompters. He had the script up there. But Ronald Reagan knew how to go off script, and that's the key. If you're slavishly adhering to the script to make sure you don't say anything stupid, and to make sure that you don't get to add any of your own character or nuance to any of the things you're saying, then you're in the Biden seat. So you can watch a Biden press conference where he literally never deviates, and then go watch Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan loose it all the way throughout and will often go off script and go off on tangents here and there and make little things that aren't on the teleprompter. And just a very charismatic way of handling themselves versus what we have now. You do the same thing with Obama. Say what you want about Obama. He was a very slick dude, had a very good public presence, knew how to go off script, knew how to fill in the gaps, knew how to recover from a stumble. Biden's stumble recovery technique involves him literally stopping, sometimes for 3, 4, 5 seconds, and closing his eyes. He literally has to close his eyes so that his brain can use its last couple of synapses to fire on whatever he was trying to think about. You can watch it happen 2 times, at least, in his last press conference, where all of a sudden he's there and he's saying, the thing about Ukraine, Jack, is that we have to enforce a line, Jack. A line. Anyways, he needs to touch the orb, yeah, but he's not invited. Buffering Biden, yeah, dude, you can watch it. Oh, Jack, where am I? Whispers McMillan Biden, dude. Do you think the Russia-Ukraine situation could stir up World War III? No. Absolutely not. And anybody that's claiming that it's going to or that it could is just fucking blowing smoke up your ass, bro. You need to, I don't know, man, go outside and get a little sunshine on your shoulders or something. There's plenty to worry about in the world. I've already gone over the age, I think 65. I think you can be no older than 65 on the first day of your presidency, and you can only serve 1 term at that point. So I think that, you can't run again. And so that would keep people that are 65 from serving for 8 years and being in their 70s and cognitively declining and shit by the time they leave. It would kind of remove, hedge against that. So you would find a lot more people that are like in their 30s, 40s, 50s running. You know what I mean? So they had plenty of time to serve before they max out. And I think that that would be totally fair, and I think it would hedge against exactly what we've seen in the last two presidencies. Because make no bones about it, he's still more lucid and charismatic than Biden, but Donald Trump is barely there. He's definitely got some pretty significant cognitive decline. You can just track that by watching older videos of him. His lucidity has gone down tremendously. And so you got the same problem with him. You got these old dudes that, normally when a dude's that old, you'd go visit him and listen to grandpa stories, and he'd be sitting in a comfy chair with his cane, watching old Perry Mason on the TV or something, and you go talk to grandpa, you go visit him, and there's a reason for that. Because by that age, a lot of people are just starting to severely decline. You should not be putting them in the most stressful, high-impact position on the planet. They're literally, I can't even fathom there being a more stressful position than President of the United States. And the fact that you put a 70, pushing 80-year-old in that position is laughable to me. Oh, yeah. I mean, people try and make excuses for the whole cognitive decline thing when it comes to Trump, but it's unarguable. All you got to do is just watch it. And he was like, the most photographed, most quoted person in America, and probably still is up near the top. But like for the longest time, anytime he said anything, it was on tape, and you can just watch him decline. From the beginnings of his presidency through the end of his presidency, there is a significant cognitive decline in Donald Trump. Noticeable. You can tell it was being managed by like medication at some points and shit. Trump would be lethargic sometimes and barely able to get a word out, and then he'd be all. The next time you'd see him, he'd be like hopped up, like he just did a big rail. That's what we're gonna do. Some days he'd be just like, I am Donald Trump. He's just like slavishly on script like Joe Biden. And some days you could tell his press team was like, get him out of there. He'd like just forget that he's supposed to be on script and just go off on a tangent about tangerines. Dude, he's gone. He's gone. He's gone bye-bye. We need to do, like, I'm fine with the cognitive exams, but they need to be strictly adhered to. They need to be given by a completely impartial, completely nonpartisan doctor. You can't have the White House doctor who's getting paid like fucking $300,000 a year on top of his practice to be the president's personal physician, and have him look at that money and go like, the president's unfit to serve. It's not going to happen. So you got to have some impartial group of doctors that examine every president and give an unbiased review of the cognitive and physical function of that president, so that you can know whether or not a president is sick mentally, especially while they're in office. Period. Cognitive test, sure, but that needs to come in concert with a hard line age limit. If there's an age limit on the bottom end of the presidency, there should be one on the top, because the same reasons exist for excluding people at certain ages. You don't put a 22-year-old in the presidency, because 22-year-olds are often very impulsive. They lack real world experience. They lack access to that knowledge. How is that different from an old man who's getting dementia? Often impulsive, lack access to their real world experience. Their brain functions are just not there yet. Same reasons. So limited on both ends. You want to be a national level politician or whatever, you got to be between the ages of 35 and 65. And you're only allowed to serve one term if you run at 65. And by the time when you reach the age of 65, no matter where you're serving, whether it's the House or the Senate or the judiciary, you're thanked for your service, you're given a plaque, and you're sent home. Just gonna vote for whoever's youngest next election. I wouldn't do that. But whatever, do what you want. I mean, businesses used to have it figured out back in the day. They've deviated now, but back in the day, it used to be standard practice to force the retirement of anybody. I don't care who they were, CEO, fucking chairman of the board. 65 years old, you get the golden parachute. Everybody pops champagne. You get the big, expensive gold Rolex. You get your pension kicks in, and you get to go retire to the Bahamas or something. Why did they do that? Because that's a pretty good age to start looking at the cognitive decline of somebody. You don't want somebody who's demented running your company. Sail off into the sunset, soldier. You know, as brutal as that is and as capitalistic as it is, I think they got the right idea. You know what I mean? I think it makes logical sense not to want the oldest person in the room to be in charge of the most stressful position in the company. No, Seneca, what I'm talking about was a corporate rule that was enforced for probably like 100 years in America and elsewhere in the world that forced retirement at the age of 65 for the exact reasons that I'm talking about. If you were a CEO or something and you got to the age of 65 years old, you're not the CEO anymore. You get, like I said, you get your golden watch, you get your pension. I'm not talking about average workers being forced to retire at 65. I don't think anybody should be working up until 65, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, we're talking about like the corporate rule that no longer really is in effect. They don't really go by it all that often anymore.
Trade you.
Oh, thanks. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Around 45 is when your mental decline starts. So, boy. Oh, no. I've only got like 3 years and change left of being a lucid individual before I turn into a complete crotchety old fuck. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it.
You can have all the excuses in the world for being an asshole. Like, I'm old.
I'm just old, man.
Oh. You ain't messing around with that kitty. Kitty's not welcome.
Evicted. Chased him into the lawnmower, D. You got him. Dino wins. Fatality. Looks like our guy is here, so I'll end this. See you later. Bye.